Hey, it's Dr. Amanda with Straightsmile Solutions, straightsmilesolutions.com, and today we're going to talk about selling your practices to a DSO or OSO. I'm not going to name any names. I really don't know that much about this. I'm just slowly digging into it just because we're starting to get a lot of people reaching out for our practices because my husband is significantly older than me and in his 60s, and he's starting to talk about retirement. And he had a friend who had a practice bought by a DSO. It was a really upscale private practice, and and it's interesting because that practice is actually in the same building as his. So he was kind of watching out for it. And a lot of weird things are happening. Like, it's not doing very well. It went from probably one of the most upscale, elite, like high quality practices in our city to the worst. I mean, it's been good for him because a lot of the patients are migrating over, but it makes me really think, how much control do you have, and sometimes you don't really know that you're selling to a DSO or OSO, or do you? So I just kind of wanted to bring up this conversation because I was listening to a podcast, which I'm not going to toss out which podcast it was just because I don't think this was the main point of the podcast, but it was a bunch of orthodontists talking, and they kind of mentioned that sometimes it's a bit like a Ponzi scheme, where especially if you're not getting paid upfront in cash, if you're getting paid partly in shares over time, and your shares are slowly, you know, um, changing. You own 90%, 80%, 70%, 60%. What they're saying is that a lot of these practices are falling under, and if they fall under, you don't get squat. So you might get something for a few months, and you might get nothing. So that made me really think, who would have thought? And they're saying that they're leveraging the newer practices to be able to support the older practice that they have. And I've heard of this, that a lot of DSOs and OSOs are now not profitable or negatively profitable. So they're having to acquire new practices to give cash flow to the other ones. And they are letting some go bankrupt. So just keep that in mind if you're thinking about selling to a DSO and OSO. I'm not saying they all do this, but certainly this kind of stuff is going on. A lot of times it looks like more money on the front end, but it could end up being significantly less money. Sometimes people think it's going to be fewer headaches if they do this because it's so streamlined, but I've only heard negative things and seen negative things. So I don't think it would be something I'd want to do. All right, thanks.